It's, and as always, Eric Alwan, the voice of Sunland Park Racetrack and Casino, joins us for our weekly chat. And boy, oh boy, after all of the months of live racing, it's come down to this, Eric. This is Sunland Derby weekend. There are a ton of huge stakes races both days, but especially Sunday, the 26th. It almost seems like every race is a big race.
It's awful big, Steve, and it's hard to believe the meet's gone by this fast. After this weekend transpires, there's only 1 week left of the whole season, but Sunday's a big day. It's a Sunland Derby day. 11 races will be on the bill, so an expanded card from that standpoint. $1.7 million on the line for the entire day. $600,000 available there in the Sunland Derby. Plus, the winner will get a virtual ticket to the Kentucky Derby. Those are some of the big sales points of it. We'll have 15 to 16,000 people, roaring with enthusiasm. So there's that element too. The biggest day of the season, kind of a culmination of all of our work on a year that's been just miserable for weather, for one thing. One of the longest winter spells I've ever seen, the windiest, and hopefully Mother Nature will give us a break next Sunday.
Well,
it was pretty rough. It was pretty rough last weekend, and here we are in the middle of March, which is supposed to be windy, but not necessarily so cold. But I think the temperatures are going to be right around 70, so we might luck out from that standpoint.
7 of the 11 races on Sunday will carry a purse of $100,000 or more. That's a monster day of racing, isn't it?
Not too shabby, huh, Steve? Any track in the world would like that kind of assessment, because there's going to be so much money on the line and so much interest, and even our local horses, have a good shot in the New Mexico bred stakes races, and there's a lot of money on there. The New Mexico Breeders' Derby is worth a huge $250,000. The New Mexico Breeders' Oaks worth a ton as well, $250,000. The NMSU Stakes, $120,000. And then there's a few semi-local horses you could maybe consider them that are running in the Sunland Derby, and they're going to have a shot at real big time glory if they were to win it and get into the Kentucky Derby. Like we've mentioned all season long on these podcasts, Zoomcasts as you call it, Todd Fincher's just been unbelievable. I think since the last time you and I spoke, he's won another 6 or 7 stakes, and he has Henry Q running in the Sunland Derby, and you could make the judgment that he should be favored. Usually the Sunland Derby coming in, it's a little hard to get marquee value on the horses coming in. Now, coming out of it, sure, we've had a whole litany of great horses that have come out of it, but sometimes there's not that much to talk about what the horses have done previously. But maybe this year's a little bit better. We have a lot of Bob Baffert flavor. He's coming to town in force, and he's bringing in hard to figure for the Sunland Derby. And all this horse did was come in second in the Bob and Beverly Lewis stakes that was held at Santa Anita last month, and got a 100 buyer. Wow. Now, for the life of me, Steve, I don't remember seeing any horses coming into this Sunland Derby with 100 buyer. 100 buyers world class, any way you slice it. And the horse is Derby eligible, so that's kind of neat. Heck, Henry Q, the horse that came in as a maiden winner from Santa Anita, won the Mind That Bird Derby by 15. He got a 93 buyer, which in my estimate is one of the highest buyers ever recorded by a Mind That Bird Derby winner. Albeit it was an extremely weak field, but the way he won it, 15 lengths, that's 3 to 4 seconds faster than the second place horse. So he stamps himself as a real credible, possible star, and Todd has him. So I kind of see it as Todd Fincher versus Bob Baffert, at least in the Sunland Derby.
How many horses are we talking about total in the Derby?
Not a lot. 7, maybe 6.
Okay.
COVID really hurt the horse racing industry a ton. You know what else it did? It hurt the transport system. You remember when I would invite you out to the little airport that's right adjunct to El Paso International, and they would come in on the Tech Sutton flights, beautiful jets that were handcrafted inside for horses. Out of business, doesn't exist anymore. Now you might ask me, well, what do they do now? Well, they have to actually book spaces, like the horses that want to ship to the Kentucky Derby, Breeders' Cup, big race. FedEx is their next best option. But in this case, I guess Bob Baffert already has all that mapped out, and these horses have been here a while. It's bringing in a few, not only for the Sunland Derby, and of course Henry Q for Todd Fincher has the advantage of already been here and never left. So he's been here 5-6 weeks. No need to ship. But in the past, the Sunland Derby has been very, very dependent upon shippers from both coasts that came in on Tech Sutton jet planes. And as I just said, I mean, that doesn't exist anymore. And I was saddened to hear that, because they didn't just serve Sunland. They served every race, every major track in the country.
Eric Alwan with us on Track Talk. So we've got Baffert versus Fincher in the Sunland Derby, but as you mentioned, 4 to 5 other horses will be racing in the Sunland Derby. Will we have Steve Asmussen or Doug O'Neill or some of the other big trainers that have come here in the past? Or will this be a mix of local and some other shippers that are going to be coming in?
When you talk about the Sunland Derby, you mean?
Yes.
I don't see any other factors. It's either Bob or Todd. Clear cut. I mean, it's such a chasm in the way that I handicap and the way that I judge horses. You know, when horses have a 20 to 30 different, 20 to 30 points difference, that's a huge valley. And I would expect, I think the morning line has already been put out. I think Tom Dawson, our consultant, did it early for this race, and he made hard to figure a 2-to-1 favorite. It's probably a little too conservative. Whenever Bob brings a horse here, Steve, I mean, whenever, automatic favorite, even against Steve for some reason. And Bob Baffert's a 3-time winner of the Sunland Derby. I think Steve is a 2 or 3-time winner. So, but I just haven't been that impressed with how did he do that? Not really. I mean, he ran second to 1 in a Vermilion in the Raleigh Allison Derby, but I don't know. I just don't see enough punch with that one. I do see a heck of an upside from this Henry Q. I don't know what Tom put Henry Q at on the morning line. It might have been 5-2. I see it a little differently. I think that Bob Baffert's hard to figure will be 6-5, and Todd Fincher's horse will be 9-5. 2 hyper favorites, in other words, battling it off with each other. Now, if you can break those two apart in an exacta, oh yeah, you're going to get paid. But I don't see both of those horses, getting kept out of the top spot. I saw the replay of Hard to Figures race when he was second in the Bob Lewis. Wow, he is an athlete. He's by a stud called Hard Spun, who just to breed to, Steve, cost $40,000. Amazing. And he's a big strapping chestnut. He cost himself $200,000 as a baby. And I don't think we've seen his top end yet. He has good cruising speed. And I could see him, taking the lead and maybe going for a wire-to-wire shot at it. But what makes it interesting is that Henry Q might have a little more stamina, maybe. He's by Blaine, and maybe we haven't seen his best yet. And that was the former Doug O'Neill trained runner, okay? Keep that in mind, in the back of your mind. I mean, it doesn't say that on the form anymore because it's in Todd's name, but Doug O'Neill had a lot to do with the development of Henry Q. Now he's in Todd's barn. Wow, that's like going from one penthouse to another penthouse. I mean, that's top flight stuff.
It's so interesting to me that we're talking about 2 favorites and 4 to 5 long shots. And ultimately, that's what this race will be. Will we see any 10-to-1s? Or will they all be in that 20-to-1 range or 50-to-1 after the 2 horses we've talked about?
Wild on Ice could be 50-to-1, sure. So strange what's happened to this horse. I thought he was so auspicious at Zia, won his very first 2 races, ran a clunker in the Raleigh Allison Derby. I couldn't figure that one out. got another really bad start in the Mind That Bird Derby, but he was beaten 21 lengths. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe, but no. How did he do that? Might be about 8 to 10 to 1. Low expectations, a double winner in California. Might be 6 to 1, maybe. How about this Fort Bragg? If he does come and runs, he has some resume marquee power because he's actually run in grade 2 stakes in Southern California. Tim Yakteen is his trainer. Another man that benefited a little bit when Bob Baffert lost some of his horses. This was another former Bob Baffert trained runner. Maybe he could be the third choice. 1 in Vermilion, I don't know, 15 to 1. So you're going to have a real disparity of odds from those big favorites, and then you're going to get some prices. It's also interesting to note that in hard to figures race last time out, the Robert B. Lewis, he lost to another Bob Baffert trained runner. There's 2 Bob Baffert horses going head to head in that race. He lost to a horse called Newgate. Newgate got hurt after that win, and well, Bob still has hard to figure, so we'll see. He looks like a really good fit for this race. And
So we've got the Harry W. Henderson handicap. We've got the Bill Thomas Memorial Stakes, the New Mexico Breeders' Oaks, the New Mexico Breeders' Derby, the New Mexico State University Stakes, the Sunland Park Oaks, and then the Sunland Derby. So many races, 6
Yes.
other big races. Which of those have the most stacked fields as you've started to really look at the program?
You mean which ones are maybe a little bit more attractive betting situation?
Or
They're
just
deeper.
better or top to bottom, just quality all the way around. When you're just looking at it and say, this is a great race.
Quality wise, the Sunland Derby is the best.
Mhm.
I mean, these horses can run a lot of different places,
Sure.
But from a betting standpoint, the New Mexico Breeders' Derby, I think is so interesting. Remember how I touted you on that Steal the Trap, and I said, Steve, his horse can't lose. Oh, it's horse racing. It's sports. Yes, there's always a way to lose. There's a billion ways to lose a race. Only one way to win. He stumbled in that race. The Red Hedeman Mile. Stumbled at the start. Bless his heart, Felipe Valdez did his best to try to relax the horse, thread his way through traffic. It's hard going from last to first in about 3 furlongs. And unless you're Secretariat, like Secretariat did in the 73 Preakness,
Yep.
you usually don't hold on when you got to make a middle move in a route race. Steal the Trap opened up 5 at the top of the stretch, Steve. Opened up 5. Look gone. Got beat a neck to another Todd Fincher horse. So those 2 rekindle the rivalry in this $250,000 race. I think it's so interesting. And may I say, for the court, Felipe Valdez is one hell of a rider. He came back about 2 weeks later and upset Belladonna. I think we were gone, or I had laryngitis or something. But Felipe Valdez rode another Todd Fincher horse who was 25 to 1 and broke that streak that Belladonna had of winning 3 races here at Sunland. And she was bidding for her 13th win. He was aboard a really good sprinter called Evacuee. And Felipe Valdez has sort of been Todd's 3rd rider that he uses. He uses Luis Fuentes, Alfredo Juarez, and then Felipe Valdez, because he has such a deep field. Do you know how many horses Todd has running on Sunday?
How many?
19.
Oh,
19,
man.
Steve. The world is his oyster. But anyway,
Sounds like it. Yeah.
but I think that New Mexico Breeders' Derby, because it has a dozen horses running in it, and this intrigue on, Through the Storm versus Steal the Trap, but you're not going to get 5 to 1 on Steal the Trap now. That's gone. He was 5 to 1 in that race that I just gave you the dramatic soliloquy. He'll be more like 5 to 2 Through the Storm. He would be the favorite. By the way, another sidelight to this is that Through the Storm, really fine New Mexico bred stakes winner. He's won twice in stakes company this season. He's owned by Leslie and Pierre Amistoy. And in my 35 to 40 year career in racing, the Amistoys have been like the Calumet Farm of New Mexico. They've had stakes winners all those years, including the great quarter horse stud, First Moonflash, who's now gone on to be one of the greatest daddies in quarter horse history. The Amestoys have a major player in the Kentucky Derby. Practical move. He's in. He's already got enough points. Won at Santa Anita a couple of times, and is really well thought of, So we want to wish, the Amestoys the best of luck, because they've been such a big part of New Mexico racing, as that you're going to see a number of their horses on Sunday. But come the first Saturday in May, they've got a player. And when I'm not talking about some 50-1 long shot either. Oh no, he's going to get played. It'll be about 6 to 8 to 1. So remember that name when the Kentucky Derby comes along. Here's a horse that probably cannot get beat. This will put the curse of death on this horse, of course, but Flying Connection's gone in the Oaks. Okay. Forget about it. Got to get the lead. Going to have a high cruising speed. Not going to get challenged. Nobody's got enough power to run her down. She was that awesome when she won the Island Fashion. And that's a Todd horse. How about the Bill Thomas? You asked about that. Bye Bye Bobby came back to the races the other day. His race was blown away by those 75-mile-an-hour winds, and we couldn't get back to it like we did before the stakes. He came back to win about 6 days ago in a comebacker, and he came from last to first and won by 5. He really likes 6.5 furlongs. He'll be very dangerous for Todd in that race. There's a horse from Phoenix in that race called Truth Seeker, who won the Phoenix Gold Cup. He's another vicious type of closer that loves sprint races. I think there's some speed in this race, and both those horses could benefit from that. I see Todd, Steve, winning at least 4 stakes races on Sunday, at least, maybe more. He's got Do or Not a Faker, who's a stakes winner running in the Breeders' Oaks. If she can get by Joel Marr's horse, Tis a Journey, well, there you go. But I think Tis a Journey could upset him. Cheese Tray for Todd is running in the NMSU stakes. All he does is win. Narrow margins, but he always wins. And you always ask me who's riding. Well, he gets Luis Fuentes. Luis has got a number of key mounts that afternoon, including Through the Storm, Cheese Tray, Do or Not a Faker, Flying Connection. Oh no, Flying Connection's ridden by Alfredo Juarez Jr. But Luis is going to be well represented in that one.
Will we see any jockeys coming in from California for this race?
Great question.
For these races. Yeah.
I'll tell you who's not going to miss it. Edwin Maldonado. He'll be here. He flew in for the mount aboard Henry Q when they won the Mind That Bird Derby. And, that's obviously got some Southern California connections. And Todd doesn't want to, disrupt that formula, because Edwin Maldonado has ridden Henry Q now twice. He rode him in the Mind That Bird Derby, and he's not going to change now. You don't want to mess up a winning formula. Henry Q won that race by 15 lengths and in almost track record time too. So he's got the home field edge. That horse does in the Sunland Derby. Whether he can get such an easy control of the pace, that's going to be could be the difference.
Eric, with so many races, will there be a pick 6 or pick 7 on Sunday where you have an opportunity to try to win a ton of money picking all the winners for all these major stakes races?
Well, we don't do the pick 6 anymore. New Mexico just never did take on. It never picked up any steam, so we've gotten away with that no more. And we never had a pick 7, but there'll be a whole slew of pick 4s, and I know a pick 5, and they could be well worth your time. There's a pick 5 starting on Sunday, and that's going to be should start up pretty early. The 6th race, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and a whole bunch of pick 4s. And you got to give a lot of credit to Dustin Dix, our director of racing. He's got us on national television starting at 3:00. Fox Sports 1 is going to be showing a lot of our races. I think the last 3 stakes. And Michelle, you will be the host of that. That could add, I don't know, $500,000 maybe in handle. And it's the first time that we're going to be on national TV in quite some time. back in the old days, in the early age of the Sunland Derby, I think we were on ESPN2 or ESPN3. But this will be neat because America's Day at the Races it really took on when there was COVID, when nobody could leave their homes and racing had that uptick. America's Day at the Races was a key component of that. There were only a few tracks running, but they took the majors, and they come out of New York, and they really have an excellent broadcast team. And Michelle, you will be here live to help host it.
Before we wrap up Track Talk, and we're going long this week for obvious reasons. This is Derby weekend, and we're giving our listeners a little bit of a double dose of you today, Eric. 12:25 post time. There's upwards of 20,000 that will be in attendance on Sunday. If you haven't attended a race all season and you want to come for this one because it's the big one, when do you recommend to arrive at Sunland to make sure you've got a good spot for all these big races?
You know, Steve, in all the years past, we've used some of the parking lot from the amusement park, Western Playland, right across the street, for some of our fans to have. Sunland Park was built with big aspirations, back in the 1959, and it is a big facility, and it can handle a lot of people. But you better come early that day. It's the best advice I can give you, because the line can get to be quite a big deal. Going past the State Line restaurant, going past the railroad tracks, and even further. Will it be that big? I don't know. Kind of depends a little bit on the weather. But we had a nice turnout last year for Slowdown Andy's big win. I don't see why it couldn't be. COVID put such a stop on our momentum. We were really rolling there with the Sunland Derby, and we had to deal with the EHV1 virus. Remember that year where we had to cancel the Sunland Derby? And then, of course, COVID took two years away from us. But I was very impressed with what came and how many people we got last year. I think it was right around 15,000 or below 14,000. It wasn't a record, and it wasn't a handle record. But it could be this year. These are some fine races and a good mixture of out of town and in town talent. And as we found out in the world of horse racing, no favorite is completely invulnerable. And I think it's going to be the Todd Fincher show. I really do. Bob will get his licks in though. He's got a horse called Ida. I'm gonna have to find out how to pronounce it. EDA, running in the Harry Henson. She hadn't run in about a year, but she's a grade 3 stakes winner. And I'm sure Bob has her ready to go for the Harry Henson. Looking forward to seeing that one as well.
Can't wait. It's going to be a fantastic weekend, especially coming up this Sunday. Eric, always appreciate the time. We'll have a lot to recap next weekend, but thanks for giving us so much great content here on Track Talk today.
Thank you so much, Steve. Look forward to next week.